Good evening and welcome to the Odeon car park on this sunny Monday evening. I've just been to see If, the new film from John Krasinski. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. I thought I knew how I felt about it, and then I left the cinema in tears. So I thought, well, while my gut response was I didn't think it was great, it did absolutely punch me in the feels. So maybe I did like it more than I thought I did. So, John Krasinski is a very good actor. And he is a nice man with a lovely beard and a very lovely wife. He's married to Emily Blunt. They have 2 girls. And he wanted to make a film that his daughters could enjoy. Because I'm pretty sure, I haven't checked, I'm pretty sure the 2 films he's directed so far are the Quiet Place films. Although I know there's a new one coming out soon. But A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place 2, he directed both. Don't know if he wrote them. They're not particularly child-friendly. Especially for their children, because in the first one, it's him and Emily Blunt, and it's quite terrifying and tense, so not one for their girls to ever watch until they're much, much older. Because that's not something you want to see your mum and dad go through, even if you know they're both actors and it's what they do for a living. So we wanted to make something that was more child-friendly, so his first offering in this sort of canon is If. And it is the story of a young girl called B. Well, a young girl, she's 12, and she keeps telling everybody she's not a kid anymore. B is going through a difficult time. We establish from the beginning of the film and an extensive flashback sequence that she has lost her mum to cancer. And in the present day, her dad is now also facing some medical issues. I don't want to give too much away about the plot. And this is obviously a very difficult thing for her to have to deal with. She has already lost one parent, and she's now obviously terrified that she's on the verge of losing another, which is not something any child should have to go to, especially not by the age of 12, to be one parent down and worried that you're going to lose the other one. And she goes to stay with her grandmother in New York in a beautiful apartment in, I think it's Brooklyn. The grandmother is played by Fiona Shaw. B's dad is played by John Krasinski, writer-director of the whole film. And she goes back to stay with grandma, which is where they were staying while her mum was obviously undergoing her cancer treatment. So she hasn't been there since she was quite a bit smaller. And now she's back again for the same reason, because one of her parents is unwell. So she's with her grandmother, played by the wonderful Fiona Shaw. And she starts to see unusual creatures around the apartment building, the first of which is Blossom, a sort of butterfly character. And then she also meets Blue, who is an enormous purple monster. Blue is voiced by Steve Carell, and Blossom is voiced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And when she meets Blue and Blossom, at the same time she meets Cal, who is played by Ryan Reynolds. And it transpires that what she's seeing are other people's imaginary friends who are now out of work because their children have grown up. So I guess there's sort of shades of Toy Story to a certain extent, and I think part of the reason why I didn't absolutely love this film is that Toy Story does it just so much better, or did it so much better. But this whole idea that the kid grows up, this imaginary friend that they've created that they needed so much when they were smaller, as they move into adulthood they no longer need them. So then what happens to them? So as she gets to know Cal and Blue and Blossom, she gets taken to a retirement home for imaginary friends, or IFs as they like to refer to themselves, and she meets a whole host of characters. I didn't love it, and I really wanted to. It's a youth certificate film. It's quite sad in places, and I'm not saying kids' films can't be sad, because, you know, E.T. is absolutely devastating, and it's okay to touch on themes of grief and loss and all that sort of stuff, and it's things that children absolutely have to deal with. But I just feel like too much of the film was quite heavy and sad. There were some wonderful sequences with B and Cal and the Ifs, and they are like a wacky bunch of characters, but I don't know, I just feel like the trailer gives the impression that it's more non-stop slapstick fun than it actually is. I feel like it's quite downbeat for a lot of the film, and I you know, that was just my feeling on watching it. The ifs themselves, when you're spending time in the company of the ifs, that's when the film really comes alive, because they are absolutely crackers. So like I said, Blossom is a sort of butterfly type character. Blue is just an enormous shaggy purple monster, sort of the size of Sully from Monsters Inc., just sort of a big purple lump of fur. One of the ifs is an ice cube in a glass. Another one is a unicorn. We've got a spaceman. We've got a banana. And it's just really funny, because the whole idea is this is what the child's pictured. This is what they've created. They've brought these creatures into existence by needing them. And they pictured whatever they pictured. And then that's what the if becomes. So, you know, yeah, a kid actually was really thirsty. He imagined an ice cube, and that was his imaginary friend. An ice cube in a glass. And who was the voice of the ice cube in the glass? So the voice cast for the ifs is ridiculous. George Clooney, Jon Stewart, Emily Blunt, Blake Lively, Awkwafina, Amy Schumer. Who else was in there? Like bananas. Richard Jenkins. It's like a who's who. And some of them are quite, I definitely spotted George Clooney's voice, and I could tell which one was Awkwafina, but a lot of them I just kind of didn't tune into. So obviously that's quite fun, that they've got all these amazingly famous people to come in and do voice work. The main ones you spend time with are Blue, voiced by, as I said, Steve Carell, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Blossom. And that's when the film is at its most fun, when you're spending time with the ifs. It doesn't do a huge amount of the, I don't know, the same sort of stuff that you see in something like Throwing It Back, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Well, no, that was a really bad example, because everybody can see Toons. Forget I said that. But normally when you've got a film where someone in the real world can see something that everybody can see, there's a lot of jokes about where they look like they're just talking to themselves. Blackbeard's Ghost, there's an example, that a reference that nobody's going to get. And they don't do that much of that, and maybe that was a conscious choice. Like I say, when it wrapped up, I did feel really emotional, but it also pushed my death of a parent buttons, because I don't have my dad anymore, and the mum is already gone at the start of the film, but this is about the dad being unwell. So obviously the thought of a dad needing surgery and being in hospital, that's quite button pushy for me. So maybe that's why I felt quite emotional. The song that played at the end of the film over the last sort of sequence was Ooh La La by The Faces, and that pushes buttons for me. And I did like the kid, the character of B. I did care about her, and I cared about Cal, and I could watch Ryan Reynolds in anything, and it's quite nice to see him doing something more child-friendly. And I know his career's been really varied, but you know, he can play quite sweary roles, and more often than not lately I've been watching him as himself in Welcome to Wrexham, in the documentary about the football team he co-owns with Rob McElhenney. So yeah, it was nice to see him in a more child-friendly mode. The characters were great. It was okay. I just feel like families going to see this youth certificate film with all these colourful characters might be a bit let down, because like I say, I just feel like it's sadder than it needs to be. I mean, not overall, but I don't know. I didn't love it, and I really wanted to. I wanted to just give myself over to it. I don't go in there with like a critical hat on. What would a critical hat even look like? Some of the ifs are really funny. Cosmo, that was another one of my favourite of his. It was sort of like a detective type guy. Yeah, they were fun characters, and I liked all of them, but overall it's okay. It's not great. It's totally passable, that's quite, you know, damning really, isn't it? But I did enjoy it, I guess, and it made me cry, so clearly it did its job. It's just, on the whole, I feel like, yeah, it was missing something, but I'm sure it'll do good business. I hope it does. I like John Krasinski very much, and I look forward to seeing what he directs next, whether it's child friendly or not. But yeah, that's me done. Thanks for listening. Katie out.